Hello, welcome to Japanese craft beer reviews. Today we're not going to do a beer review, we're going to do a book review. And this is, I believe, the fifth book I have reviewed in this series on my channel. And the book I'm going to review today is called Barrel Aged Stout and Selling Out. It is by Josh Noel, who is a Chicago Tribune travel writer and beer writer, and it came out in 2016. And this book charts the progress of Goose Island, the development of Goose Island Brewery in Chicago, and it follows them from their beginnings to their status as absolute craft beer darlings and rock stars, and then to just the exact opposite when they sold themselves to Anheuser-Busch, AB-InBev. And it's quite an interesting read. And basically it goes from a middle-aged man, sitting in an airplane on a tarmac in the middle of a rainstorm, so the plane can't take off. A man who grabs a magazine out of the pocket in front of him on the airplane and opens up to a page, sees something, makes a life-changing decision. From that to him, the same man, saying "fuck you" to a loyal customer many years later. And how did we get there from that decision to that expletive so many years later? And that's what this book really goes from one thing to the other here. The man in question is named John Hall, and he was an executive for the Container Corporation, which makes corrugated boxes, and in fact many of the corrugated boxes or cardboard boxes that you see in the United States will have their stamp on it, the CC, Container Corporation stamp. It's a very large company for that. So he was on a plane, stuck on a tarmac, waiting for a rainstorm to pass so he could take off. And this is 1986, he pulled out a in-flight magazine and saw an article about a craft beer brewery. And I don't know if he was having a midlife crisis or what, but he decided to completely change careers and retired from his company and took that money and started what became Goose Island. And Goose Island opened in 1988, and the writer, Noel, explains that 1988 was the same thing as 1969 in rock and roll. So many of the great early craft breweries really came out at that time. So with things like Rogue in Portland, Wine Coop, Great Lakes, North Coast, Deschutes, also in Portland, Brooklyn, and Goose Island all started in that year, 1988. So quite a landmark. But very quickly they became successful, and the next year, 1989, they won a silver medal at the Great American Beer Festival for their wheat beer. And in the very next year, 1990, the esteemed beer writer Michael Jackson was talking about Chicago breweries, and he said, "My favorite is Goose Island." So, and the son of the founder, John Hall, Greg Hall, the son, he quit school and decided to go to work for the family, and he began working as an assistant brewer. In 1994, they were looking for ideas for their 1,000th batch, and they decided that they would make a 18% barrel-aged stout. This son, Greg, he really seems like a piece of work, a very hard-driving, headstrong young guy. And he seems like, I don't want to say Donald Trump comes to mind, but it seems like he had things handed to him pretty easily. He worked very hard, of course. He learned the business from the ground up, but he would come to employees and say, stare them in the eye and kind of intimidate them and say, "What are you doing? Are you reading anything these days? Have you read Michael Jackson?" And so, I don't know. It sounded like it might have been hard to work there. But on the other hand, he took everything higher. He created the sense of beer with real cachet, or what's younger beer geeks used to call whales with a Z. Whales, beers, limited beers that everybody was trying to get. So the barrel-aged stout made quite a hit, and eventually Anheuser-Busch, AB-InBev started courting them. In the 1990s, they were not so worried about craft beer, but by 2005, the writing was on the wall. Craft beer was really rising, and major beer companies' sales were not. So they started looking around to see what could we do? How can we get in on this here? In 2006, they made their initial deal with Goose Island after a lot of negotiation, and in 2011, basically it was all done. More of the brewery was sold. In 2017, they sold the initial brew pub to AB-InBev, and the sense was among the ownership at Goose Island was, it's just beer. We're not doing anything else. Don't think about how it actually got in your glass. Just enjoy it. It's just beer. Well, no, of course it's much more than that. It's people. It's a brewery culture. The owner, or the son, Greg Hall, was saying things like, "We can hire more people now. We can sell more beer. What's wrong with that? That's great." Well, yeah, of course it's great, but the culture in the brewery changed, and it changed very quickly. As soon as AB-InBev was involved, drug testing came in, and a lot of the brewers and people involved said, "Fuck this, I'm leaving, I'm gone." Another case is a woman who worked in the office apparently would go every day inside the brewery and fill up her bottle with water, and then walk back to her desk wearing her flip-flops. And apparently one time she was doing this when a group of quality control people from AB-InBev was there, and they were checking off all sorts of flaws that they found, 120 different flaws in the production process, including a staffer walking in her flip-flops to pick up water from the brewery. So in 2012, production began. Goose Island beers was switched over partially to AB-InBev breweries. They could make a lot more beer, so they could make this beer in much larger quantities. And in the United States, it's listed on the label. So it will say Goose Island, Chicago, and then it will list the AB-InBev location where it was brewed. In 2013, they gained national distribution of the beer. And in 2012 to 2014, brewers started leaving, and they would go to, for example, Lagunitas opened up a brewery in Chicago, and they took several brewers from Goose Island. And one of the most famous ones was Matt Brynildson, who went to Firestone Walker and went on to much greater things there. And more decisions were being made by the staff at AB-InBev. For example, recipes. Brewers at Goose Island were excited to do this and that, but no, they were handed recipes. Make this, don't complain, don't talk. And more of the beers were being made outside of Goose Island. So the buyouts from brewery or larger companies started increasing. In 2014, 10 Barrel, rather small brewery in Bend, Oregon, sold out. Elysian in Washington State did the same, and they were kind of caught by surprise. The owner, Cantwell, apparently sold out, and then very quickly after was watching the Super Bowl when Budweiser's Super Bowl ad came up, and it said, "We make honest beer. Let them make their pumpkin peach ales." And of course, Elysian made a pumpkin peach ale. And Elysian's Loser Pale Ale had the logo, or had the subtitle, "Corporate Beer Sucks." And so it's kind of ironic, they were still, so this beer is being sold by AB-InBev, but it was still there, "Corporate Beer Sucks." So in 2015, Golden Road in Los Angeles sold out. Breckenridge. In 2017, Wicked Weed, a very respected maker of wild and sour ales, sold out, and their Funkatorium annual festival immediately just collapsed because nobody wanted to join it with them. So what is gained? What is lost here? Well, what's gained, of course, is money and a certain amount of prestige and attention, nationwide, worldwide. What's lost is, of course, the people, the brewery culture that produces the beer, the brewing process, the whole atmosphere. Craft beer has a kind of sense of being rebellious, and in most cases, when a brewery grows, it becomes more corporate and less rebellious. And let me turn this to Japan now. In Japan, there are 4 major breweries, and they also kind of play hardball, and they buy out here and there, mostly abroad. So Asahi is bought out in Australia, and so buying in Eastern Europe, but buying parts of craft beer. Yoho Brewery, the largest craft beer, has sold out partially, and Kirin has their Tap Marché system, which is a server for craft beer, a very simple system in which you plug in 3-liter plastic bottles of different beers, and they can put craft beer on it. And the unfortunate thing is several craft breweries have bought into this because it allows sales. If you can look at a map of a Craft Marché server system in different cities in Japan, and it just covers everywhere. And part of it is you're serving Kirin beers as well as regular craft beers. And some of the craft breweries that have joined them are things like Hitachi no Nest, Konishi, Miyazaki Hideji, Yamaguchi Beer, Far East, Yoho, of course, DHC, Brooklyn, Issei Kadoya, Brooklyn, which has a link with Kirin in Japan, Issei Kadoya, Kinshachi, Tokyo Blues, Ginga Kogen, and Iwate Kura. Many of these respected craft brewers who are kind of getting in bed with the enemy. It's not, it's not that those aren't craft beer, but they are being sold alongside and through the corporate system. Yeah. The Japanese major breweries are not as predatory as companies like AB-InBev. They are buying outside of Japan, Eastern Europe, Australia. In Japan, there's not such a sense of corporate beer as the enemy, but in some sense they kind of are. The future is open, and we will see what happens. Craft beer is having trouble now in the time of coronavirus, and we'll see who comes out of it successful. In any case, this is a wonderful book. I kind of got off topic, but I hope you have a chance to buy it. It's a very interesting read. The journalistic style is extremely readable. It's really a page turner, and he has kind of a fly-on-the-wall style where you're looking in on what was happening to the Goose Island Brewery as it developed and then sold out. Give it a look. Once again, it's called Barrel Aged Stout and Selling Out by Josh Noel. Okay, that was a little bit long, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.